Power couple goals, Martin and Coretta, things you may not know. This is Joyfully Married After with Heath and Tracy. I'm Heath.
And I'm Tracy.
We're joyfully married after how many years, baby?
26.
26 years, 4 kids, corporate jobs, entrepreneurs, and this podcast is our view on life through our lens.
Let's go. Hello, hello.
Hey, baby.
Hi. So today,
MLK.
what are we talking? MLK. We're gonna talk about MLK. We cannot get through the beginning of the year without first discussing this man in his life and his legacy.
It's MLK Day.
Yes.
MLK Day weekend.
Yes. Well, whenever you're listening to it, this is when we're recording it. So thank you so much. So we are a married couple that discusses things about marriage. Yep. And we just wanted to talk about Martin, Coretta, and their marriage, how they met, and what was so significant about this marriage.
Yeah, they were frequently people talk about Martin sort of independently of Coretta. And I think it's more rare to talk about them as a couple. And they were certainly an original power couple.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Even though they were only married for 15 years prior to his assassination, I think they contributed so much. And why I think they are such the power couple is because they lived purposefully. They lived with a purpose. They succeeded in that purpose as far as we are living our lives today. And they did it together as a unit. Yeah. I think it's funny when you look back on some of the articles in the books that we looked at before this podcast and you see how they met.
They met through a mutual friend, right?
She wasn't feeling him.
She was like, "Who is this dude? He's not really tall. He's not really what I envisioned. And I ain't even really trying to get married right now."
Sound familiar? So they met through a friend. A friend slipped Martin her phone number. He was on the hunt. Now, that's another thing, ladies and gentlemen. He was looking for a wife.
He was in marriage mode.
He was in marriage mode. I think he was in Boston getting his PhD.
Yeah, he's working on his doctorate.
And she was there on a scholarship to the conservatory, the musical conservatory.
Who knew that Coretta could sing?
Well, I did.
Does everybody know that Coretta was like a vocalist? Like music was her thing. I mean,
she was going to be a performer.
If you polled people and you asked them, do you know what Coretta Scott King's career path was?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to answer that question.
No.
Yeah,
no.
She was a vocalist. She was a singer. She wanted to move on and be a performer. But then here comes this guy.
Hey, how you doing?
So he loved her when he first saw her.
He was like, girl.
He said, you have all of the qualities that I want.
You checking all the boxes for me.
Now, what's key about that?
Because that means that he was looking, he knew what he wanted, and he found it in her.
But he told her.
He told her. He pursued her.
Listen, man.
He let her know.
He told her.
You are doing it for me.
You are doing it for me.
I am interested.
What else can you do other than just sing? That was one of his questions to her.
What did she say?
I think she just laughed at him.
She was like, he's 5'7" and he's not tall, and
he shaved off his mustache, pledging or something.
What kind of nonsense is this?
I ain't got time for this. It was interesting.
She wasn't feeling it.
She was not feeling him at first. So there's something to be said there.
Yeah.
It's not always, the feelings ain't always there the first go round, ladies.
But she spent time talking with him.
But why, the interesting thing about their courtship is that he pursued her.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And I'm not saying you didn't say it. But that flipped the script. As she spent more time with him, as she spent more time having conversations with him,
right.
She said he grew in stature.
She was like, "Woo, you getting taller in my mind," and she got to like him better.
Yeah.
The more and more time they spent talking,
right, conversing, they called it courtship back then.
Because women want to talk, gentlemen. You need to engage them in conversation. You need to learn about them. You need to talk with them so that they can see what you're all about.
In her posthumously published book, My Life, My Love, My Legacy, Coretta wrote that when Martin pulled up in his green Chevy that cold Thursday in January, quote, my first thoughts reaffirmed what I had anticipated.
Which was?
He was too short.
Too short.
Didn't look that impressive.
He was not that impressive
unquote. On top of that, he was sporting his normal mustache. So he looked quite young. But they talked.
Right.
And they found out that they had a lot in common.
Yep.
She wrote, in fact, the longer we talked, the taller he grew in stature.
Yes.
And the more mature he became in my eyes.
So have you ever been to that statue in D.C. where the King Memorial is? I mean, that thing is like 30 feet tall.
Well, yeah.
And Martin Luther King was 5'7".
He was 5'7".
But it's such a juxtaposition, the illustration, right, of what a giant of a man that he was,
right,
in terms of his impact on the entire globe. And so I just found that really interesting when we were sort of looking through these articles. What a giant MLK is to this day, and his legend continues to grow. So pretty cool. Right.
So the other thing is, she said that he told her when they were driving home after that first meeting, you have everything I've ever wanted in a wife. There are only 4 things. He said character, intelligence, personality, and of course, ladies, beauty.
Yes.
And she loved the fact that he was flustered with her. She loved the fact that it was like, oh my God, this guy is like falling out over me.
Right.
She was flattered by his candor. She was flattered by the fact that he was very, very honest with her.
He was paying attention to her. He was talking with her. He was laying it out for her. He was not playing games. He was all about it, Coretta.
And then after that, he took her to a party and showed her off.
This is my woman.
She wasn't hidden out somewhere.
She's on my arm.
And then that brought her even closer to him. Because the fact that he could have been with anybody he wanted to at that time, probably.
Yeah,
he chose her. And that gave her pause. That made her feel like wanted. Gentlemen, make your woman feel wanted. It does wonders.
Or if you're just meeting a woman, or if you're just getting to know a woman, right? And you're getting all the signals, she's checking out boxes for you. You need to convey that. Let her know that I'm feeling it right now.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
There's nothing wrong with communicating. Don't worry about getting rejected. You want to talk about that a little bit, Heath?
I think that might be a separate podcast.
It is, but he wasn't afraid of it.
No, he
wasn't afraid of being rejected by her.
He was going for it. He was letting her know, hey, this is the mode that I'm in. I see this in you. Are you interested?
She said he brought up marriage that night, Heath.
Hey, man, know what he wants. He was like, yo, once you talk to somebody for several hours, you can kind of get an early sense of what I'm saying in terms of, you may not know that you want to marry them in the first hour of conversation. But if you are one who is in that mode and you are constantly...
You mean man?
If you're a man.
Okay.
And you want to be married.
You know you want to be married.
You know you want to be married.
All right.
You know the type of woman that you want to marry.
Or let's just be honest and say you have found that woman. Yeah,
what I'm saying, even before you find her.
Okay.
If you have a certain level of self-awareness, then you understand yourself. You understand what you need, where you are, where your gaps are personally, professionally, in life, in terms of a mate and what they would bring. And the other thing about King is that King was a minister of the word. So that means that he had an understanding of the word, and he had inherent wisdom because it was in his family, it was in his father, it was in him, it was in his upbringing. And so this was a man who knew the word of God very intimately. Yes. So you have to also understand that even if you don't have a tremendous amount of formal education, when you have the wisdom, the word says something to that effect, was that you can have wisdom that can far exceed other people.
Correct.
When you have that intimate understanding. So not only, did he read the Bible, but he had an intimate understanding of it. And so all of those things, I think, collectively made it to where when he met her, he already knew this is what I'm looking for.
Right.
So for him, it was more of an accelerated scenario because he already had a vision of what he wanted. what he was looking for and what he valued. And so therefore, when he found it, he was like, yo,
you what I'm looking for.
boom.
I see. So I think it's important that gentlemen know what they're looking for.
Yeah, because a lot of times I think today guys are not necessarily looking. Well, let me rephrase. I think guys are always looking.
You think?
But they have not given an intimate amount of thought as to what it is that they're looking for.
I think they know what they're looking for physically.
That's what I'm saying.
They know they want a certain type of hair texture. They know they want a certain skin tone. They know they want a certain body type or body shape. They know they want her to have a certain level of education or not, or they don't care, or eye color. I think if you ask most men what their ideal woman/wife is, they would give you physical description.
Just because you're looking does not mean that you see.
Ooh, okay, Heath Turner. I like that. So as they courted, back to Martin and Coretta.
The power couple goals. Hashtag power couple goals.
When you talk about power couple, this is a power couple.
Hashtag power couple goals.
We're still in the phase they weren't quite a power couple yet.
Correct.
But she had to really think about her feelings for him and her future with him.
Right.
So she was intentional during the courtship, as was he. And that's another thing. Courtship, dating, whatever you want to call it. You have to be intentional about it if your end is to be married. Now, she says in her book, I was not looking for a husband.
Right.
He was looking for a wife.
Yep.
So she had to make a decision.
Yep.
He always brought up marriage. She said it took her 6 months to answer him. He asked her to marry him so much. It took her 6 months.
Right.
To really say, okay.
She didn't give him the Heisman. She just said, I need time to think about it.
Yeah. And that's something else, ladies. If you are with someone and they're asking, just because you don't feel it right away does not mean it's a no. You know?
Yeah.
If you feel like you need, and another thing she said she prayed about it. And then she had a dream. So it's important to stay connected to God. How Heath and I always end our YouTubes, stay connected.
Stay connected to God.
Right.
Stay connected to your family and stay connected to your spouse or your significant other.
Right. So we always talk about that. So the thing about that is to keep in mind, just because you're not feeling it right then and there, but you like him or her, keep going, keep pushing, but have intent.
Yep.
Have intent.
Purpose.
Another thing that people may not know is Daddy King, MLK's father, did not care for Coretta when he first met her.
Wasn't feeling her.
He was not feeling it. What'd he say, baby?
He said, well, if y'all gonna keep courting like this, y'all probably need to go ahead and get married.
But before that, he said, all these women in Atlanta.
And you got this girl from Boston or wherever they were.
And she stood up and she said, I have something to offer too.
Boom.
So there was no fear there. There was no fear in confrontation because she was sure about, at this point, she was sure about where she wanted the relationship to go with Martin.
And in addition to that, she obviously was very confident in herself and her God.
Which is so important. You cannot get with somebody else if you don't have it together yourself yet.
Yep.
Understand that.
Yep.
So his dad kept going on and on and on, talking about these other women, why you got her, all this stuff.
Yep.
Then Martin addressed his mother and said, quote unquote, Coretta is going to be my wife.
That's how it's going to be. That's what we're doing.
And then Daddy King came back, well, then y'all better get married then.
Because y'all doing
y'all courting real hard.
So let's go and get it done.
So I think that speaks to the man not being persuaded by his family if he is sure that he wants that person to be his wife.
Yeah.
Because that happens a lot. The sister, mama, aunties get involved.
Sure.
And then next thing you know, your relationship is sideways.
Right.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the confidence that he had within himself, him understanding where he was in life and his self-awareness. And so when he figured out that Coretta's the one, she's the one that I'm pursuing, I'm all in, and this is what it's going to be, he was very confident. It was very easy for him to be like, well, this is what it's going to be. So y'all going to have to get it together.
Can you relate, Heath Turner?
Yeah, I can relate.
How can you relate?
I had to do the same thing. So, for me, I had a previous long-term relationship, and when that broke off and then you came on the scene not too long after that, the family was confused. They were like, well, what happened to the other one? I was like, and I was like, she didn't know how to treat me. So she out of here. I dig this one.
No, I think somebody said, well, we like the other one.
I was like, well, that don't matter because I got to live with her every day. You don't have to. You not in my relationship. So that was very easy for me.
That was easy.
Yeah, because you have to have the self-awareness and the confidence of understanding what your marriage, what your relationship is, what it is, and what it's going to be.
Right. Right.
There
Very
you
important point.
There you
Very important point. And then Coretta wasn't driven away simply because his family didn't agree right away.
Right. Because she probably had the same kind of awareness. Hey, if we're going to get married, I'm going to be married to him.
Exactly.
Yes, it is the joining of two families, but y'all are not going to live in our house every day.
No.
So I need to be comfortable with the relationship. He needs to be comfortable. We need to be on one accord so that we can move forward.
And the family needs to move forward in supporting that.
Exactly right.
No matter what.
Exactly right.
You need to support.
Yep.
Talking about the wedding and the wedding vows, do y'all know? I did not know this.
Yeah, no, I didn't know this either.
That I'm going to go ahead and read it because
go ahead,
she wanted to edit her vows.
Go ahead and read
Coretta Scott wanted to edit her vows.
To love and obey.
Because if you think about a woman who's on scholarship at a conservatory, learning her craft, learning to become a performer, and she meets this man. It's like, we get married. She's like, wait.
Right.
I'm not trying to do that. So because she wasn't in looking for husband mode,
right,
she had to adjust a lot.
Yep.
She was not your typical 50s woman.
Right.
She had to adjust a lot. She changed her major during the courtship because she knew who she was dealing with. She knew the type of life and lifestyle that was coming.
Yep.
He was a preacher. He was a social activist. And there's not a lot of money there. So she switched her major from
performance, right?
For performing arts to music education.
Right. Because she was like, yo, if I need to bring some additional income, you
right,
know, depending on what's going on in the marriage, I need to be prepared to do that.
It would allow her to teach and earn income
right,
if they needed it as a couple.
And that was very forward thinking, very out of the ordinary for women in that time when you talk about the 50s and understanding income generation and the approach that she was taking. So that was very, very poignant.
Yeah, she was definitely ahead of her time, very unconventional for that time.
Correct.
She also made some edits to her wedding vows, y'all.
Okay. Talk to me.
Quote, I had made up my mind that I wanted the traditional language about obeying and submitting to my husband deleted from our marriage vows.
So take that out, please.
Quote, unquote. The language made me feel too much like an indentured servant.
She did not have a deep understanding of the word as it relates to that thing. And so for her, the times, she took it very literally and was like, I ain't gonna be no indentured servant. We need to remove that from the vows.
I don't know. I kind of think she was just being more forward. It wasn't about her obeying Martin.
Right.
It wasn't about, is it about me obeying you?
No,
the hesitation.
We obey each other because we are in submission to one another. So, but I'm saying that's another conversation for another day. But I'm saying I have today in 2018, I have a much deeper understanding of the concept of submission than they probably did in the 50s. True. And so the worldly environment and what those words were on their face to her was like, hey, I ain't feeling it.
Yeah. So she didn't have those words in her vows.
She was like, take that out, please.
And they agreed to it. She said they did not balk at it. So she said she was surprised by that.
She was surprised that Dr. King and
Daddy
King agreed without putting up a huge fight about it.
Right.
So that was pretty cool.
I think that was cool. And that's something I didn't know.
Yep.
And I think it's important, bringing it back to today, is that if you are in a situation where you're thinking about marriage and talking to marriage with someone and you want a change made, make it. They need to understand up front that she's not down with that, or he's not down with that.
Yep.
It's a communication that's very important, that upfront communication. The other thing is, y'all spending all this money on honeymoons and everything. Do you know that their wedding night was unconventional too?
Talk to me about the wedding.
So you can't when back then it was very difficult for black people in those times to have there were no hotel accommodations, nice accommodations, honeymoon type accommodations for blacks back then. So they stayed in the home of a family friend who happened to be an undertaker that worked out of his house.
Not the undertaker.
Yes. So basically their honeymoon night was spent in a funeral home, y'all.
Amazing.
And y'all talking about, oh, we got to do this and we got to do that and you got to pay for this and you got to pay for that. No, you don't. And I'm not saying that's what they wanted. Yeah. I'm sure they wanted something more than that. Yeah. But that had no bearing on the marriage. Right. It had no bearing on the fact that they were happily, they were together, they were a successful couple, and they got things done. Right. So I think it's important to keep that in perspective when you're doing all this planning and spending money. Yeah. That it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary.
Yeah, they weren't about fancy.
Right. They weren't about fancy at all.
They were like, we together, we doing this, we over here chilling, we enjoying our honeymoon, now we getting on with our lives.
Right. It wasn't about we have to make this big brouhaha honeymoon thing. Yeah. It wasn't important. I'm not saying it should be, but let's put it in perspective.
She fell in love with a future leader.
Right. So another thing I was really impressed with in doing some research about these two is their nearly 15-year marriage existed during one of the most brutal, active times in our country's history. The civil rights, the civil rights movement.
There was a lot going on.
And not only did it exist during this time, it grew. They had 4 children, and they made change. Right. And they're trying to be married, have children, and he was a leader of the civil rights movement at that time. Their first child, Yolanda, was born 2.5 weeks before the Montgomery bus boycott.
2.5 weeks.
Oh my gosh. And MLK III was born 5 weeks after the Little Rock Central High School integration.
Yep. Yeah. Amazing.
The University of Georgia was integrated the same month Dexter was born. Yeah. Their third child. And the Freedom Rides. And then Bernice, their last child, was born. Well, she was 15 days old when he was jailed in Birmingham. Yeah. And y'all talk about the stuff you going through in your marriage. When I read that, I was like, this is wild. Yeah. This is a power couple. Say what you want. Yeah. The rumors or whatever you want to say about Coretta Scott, about Martin Luther King Jr., this is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. They held it together. They thrived through all of that turbulence and all of the things that were going on in the U.S. It was just an amazing time. And to be able to nurture your marriage, to nurture children, and to provide the kind of leadership for an entire nation is just beyond comprehension sometimes.
Do you think he could have done everything that he did without her?
No. And I think that he knew that even before they were married. I don't think that he envisioned what would happen down the road, but I think that he understood that he would play the role of leadership in some capacity in his community, in leading a church, in leading a family. And so he recognized that he needed that type of woman, which is why he so fervently pursued her, I think, when he found what he was looking for in this woman.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree with that. I think it's important for men out there to not just look for a woman that looks good or not just look for a woman that does it for you in the bedroom. It's important for you to look for a woman that is going to push you through to your dreams. Sure. Just like ladies, ladies, it's important for you to look for that man who's not just buying you red bottoms or LVs, to push you through to your dreams.
Sure.
And I think we miss that, especially in our community. We really miss that out there, that these are the things that are important. And this particular power couple shows that.
Yep.
I'm not dissing all these other power couples out here, y'all, or what
No.
you all call power couples, but it
No.
does not compare.
Yeah.
It does not compare. I think you mentioned earlier how it's important that even if your husband is balling, you need to do something other than buy, shop, look pretty, and travel.
Yeah, I was talking about the concept of how she was very forward thinking when she was going through her educational process, changed her major once they began courting, understanding that if this continued to go this way, then she was going to need to possibly be in position to generate additional income. And so we were talking about the concept of this and how important that is for women. And even if your husband is a quote, quote, baller, I think one of the examples we talked a little bit about before we started the podcast was
Aisha Curry.
Aisha
I
Curry.
love her.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah, and so that's just such a fantastic point. Her husband is, one of the stars of the NBA, and so things are going well, and she knew that he was making a lot of money and was about to make a lot more money and those kinds of things. But she has been, a rock of their family.
Yes.
So close with raising their children and all
She has
of
her
those
own
things.
restaurants.
And she has started creating
Her
business,
own little empire.
doing her own brand and all types of things in tandem with
Yes.
what he's doing. And because you never know what can happen, right? And so she probably, one, is fulfilling, some personal needs
Yep.
and that kind of thing. But in tandem with that, hey, he gets sick, he gets injured, he gets whatever. Now you have some other things that are happening in the household where she is taking the initiative to do that and seizing on this moment in time and their celebrity and other things that she's leveraging to create business. So I just thought it was a great example.
Do you all realize that if he hadn't married the right woman, we would not be celebrating Martin Luther King Day? We would not be able to visit the National Historic Sites, especially the one that was just made national. This is all her doing.
Yep. The holiday.
I don't care what anybody says. This is all her doing.
Right. She was the one who was very strategic in creating the holiday at the beginning, right? Before there, some of our listeners may not realize that there has not always been a Martin Luther King Jr. holiday.
No. I remember when there wasn't. I remember the brouhaha behind us even asking for a holiday. How dare you?
Right.
For who? I don't think so.
Right. And all of the states didn't adopt them at the same time.
Arizona was the last.
Yep. And so that was something that jumped out. But the point is that Coretta Scott King was one of the ones who was very instrumental in
continuing the legacy,
in initiating the conversation around the holiday.
Yeah.
As well as the Nonviolence Center.
The Nonviolence Center also.
Yeah. So kudos to her. Shout out to Coretta and all of the King family. Just a phenomenal
for
legacy.
Continuing this legacy that we live under.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that, and the reason why I bring up what she did, not to take away anything from what he did, they were only married 15 years. They were, and that's mind-boggling to me because Heath and I we've been married almost 30 years, and it's like they were only married 15 years.
Yeah, they did a lot,
and they did so much.
Yeah, they did a lot.
They did so much, and you need to think about that when you're thinking about a significant other. When you're thinking about marrying a significant other, think about what is the legacy I'm going to leave? What are we going to push out there and leave this world a better place?
Yep.
Not just what I'm going to get or what I'm going to buy or where I'm going to go or what I'm going to wear. What is your life purpose in your marriage? Because that gives your marriage strength.
Right.
That gives your marriage power. I just think it's so important to advocate for that. That's what Heath and I do. We do this podcast. We do our YouTube. We do all of this because we are advocates of marriage. We are advocates of matrimony. We are advocates of loving couples.
Yes.
Because you can't do it by yourself. And if you think you're doing it by yourself, you're not. You're not doing it by yourself.
I always need a helper.
You need somebody. And you know
Hashtag
what?
power couple goals.
And somebody is there. Somebody is there helping you, whether you see it or not. You getting some help.
Yep. So what we learned today was that we need more power couples like the Kings.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
We learned some really cool things, and so just a couple of quick points for you to consider when you're thinking about mates of your own. So be selective.
Definitely.
Don't have any fear. Support one another, right?
No fear here.
No fear here. Support one another through the challenges, right? No fear about how you're going to approach things because you've got that mate next to your side. And then the third thing is have couples' life purposes, right? Have a purpose about your marriage, things that you want to accomplish, and how you want to impact
As a
not just your
couple.
family, but the world as a couple.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening today, folks. If you liked any of what you heard, please like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast. Tell a friend, too. You can engage us at heathentracy.com for all the goings on in our world. Queen Tracy, speak to the people.
Bye, loves.